Just Blaze versus The Alchemist, the rematch of the century. Both of these producers have made beats using the exact same sample multiple times. So today we're putting their beats side by side again to see who came out on top. And this time, their beats are even better. So let's see if we can settle this once and for all and find out who sampled it better. In this video, we're gonna break down how both of these producers made beats using the exact same sample, the different sampling techniques they used, and even some ideas you can use for your own beats. So let's start off by looking at yet another sample both of these producers have used. So this is a soul sample that The Alchemist and Just Blaze actually used in the exact same way, but just in opposite directions. So let me show you what I mean. First, let's look at The Alchemist beat where he used this sample for Prodigy and Big Noid on the grimy way.
Hey yo, I produce threats, text, the underworld sweat when I rap for my set. I pull out text and let wet.
So here's how The Alchemist made this beat. After pitching it up half a semitone, he focuses on using the beginning part of the sample. Now you may have noticed something about this sample. The instrumentation is drastically different based on which side of the stereo presence you listen to. You'll notice we have this guitar on the far right side and the keys on the far left side. And this allows The Alchemist to do a powerful sampling technique. What he does is isolates only one side. He chooses the left side for his beat, so the focus is mostly on the keys and we get far less of that guitar coming through. So this can help you take an otherwise complex sample and use a more simplified version of it by just isolating one side of the stereo field if the instrumentation is split like this in your sample. So now using these mostly isolated keys, he starts making his chops. And for the most part, he keeps it simple. The chops play sequentially in order, almost like a loop. But then, as you can see, once we get to this end area, The Alchemist goes back in the sample and uses an earlier chop, instead of just letting the sample continue to play. Now, why do this? Well, it becomes somewhat obvious when you listen to how the sample just actually ends. We get these loud blaring horns that come in, which would make the beat just sound a little bit disjointed. To have this come in and then suddenly cut off as the loop goes back around. So The Alchemist chooses to keep his loop sounding consistent by just using an earlier chop and leaving out that horn. Then from here we have the drums, like the hi-hats, the snares, and lastly, the kicks. But this beat isn't done just yet, it still needs more, so The Alchemist builds a perfect bass line to go with this beat. And in case you struggle with building bass lines that actually work with your samples, I built a plugin that helps you do this. It's called Note Grabber, and what it does is it shows you every single note inside of your sample, all in real time. Plus, if you want, you can even select notes from this screen and then drag them into your beat. This makes building bass lines, melodies, and patterns that actually work with your sample much easier since you know exactly what notes are in your sample. So here we have the framework for the bass line made. And then after, The Alchemist just adds a few more bass notes to fill up the empty pockets in his beat, and the beat is complete. I remember listening to this beat like more than 20 years ago now, and it still holds up for me today. Next, let's take a look at how Just Blaze used this exact same sample in Everything's a Go for Bleak and Jay-Z.
Everything's a go, and I just washed the wheel and I overrode the wheels and it's real. Everything's a go.
Now earlier I said The Alchemist and Just Blaze use the exact same sampling approach, just in opposite directions. And what I meant by that is that Just Blaze uses the exact same section of the sample that The Alchemist did, but instead of focusing on the left channel and using those keys in the sample, Just Blaze isolates the right channel and focuses on the guitar in the sample. And similarly to the Alchemist, a larger loop of the sample is used with a few chops around it to build a cleaner loop. You can see he adds chops at the tail end and the beginning of this beat to create a clean loop. But from here, Just Blaze builds around the sample in a far less traditional way compared to most beats. Instead of the common approach of having a kick on the 1 and the snare, or a clap on the 2 and the 4, we have a clap placed on every single beat. And then we have kicks that are placed in between these claps. Just a very odd approach overall. Now at this point, you may feel like this beat feels a little bit empty and bare, and this is where Just Blaze does even more strange stuff with his beat. He keeps the beat at this size, but as the beat continues to play, what happens is Just Blaze slowly adds more to make the beat bigger and bigger. Partway through, he adds in those keys from the left channel and also adds a bass to make the beat slightly larger. So you can see these are the exact same chops as the first layer, but I just isolated the left channel instead. This idea plays for a few bars, and then from here, as the beat continues, Just Blaze then swaps this layer for another, where he adds in those big horns from the sample into the beat, plus a few more percussive elements to make the beat even larger. And then after this, the beat goes right back to that more minimal idea and then starts building up slowly again. A very unusual beat, not only with how it's put together, but how it's structured. But overall, just some really inventive ideas here. Now before you decide who won this round, let's make this a triple threat match. I'm gonna make a beat using this sample too, and we'll see who the real winner is. So the first thing I'm gonna do is throw this into my sampler, and I'm gonna use the sample in an extremely simple and straightforward way. Now this might sound like a boring repetitive pattern right now, but that's kind of the point. I just want to use this sample as a unique texture in the beat. The fact that this pattern is not very musical or not very rhythmically interesting is fine, because I can just build that using my own sounds. So let's do exactly that next. Here I'm going to grab this electric piano, and I'll build a pattern that works with the sample idea here. Now, since I know nothing about music theory, I'm just gonna use Note Grabber here once again. This will help me figure out what notes I should use for this pattern. Here we have a G sharp, above it we have a D sharp, and over here we have a B. And so by drawing these notes in and dragging them over, I can easily build chords that work perfectly with my sample. And now let's use this to introduce some more musicality into the beat by changing the second chord slightly. I do feel a little bit more needs to be added in, so let's add yet another layer of keys into the beat using what Note Grabber showed me. I do feel a little bit more of a melodic idea is missing, so I'm going to use the exact same preset that I've been using to build that. I do want a few more details in this beat. I still think it's a bit bare, so let's see how this sounds. Alright, at this point I do feel like I'm at the risk of overproducing, so let's build out the structure in this beat before moving on to see if this beat feels like it needs more. Here I'm going to use drums from my pack that's coming out next week, so make sure you don't miss out on next week's video. now I think just a simple bass line added into this beat and it will be done. So whose beat was number one? Who won this huge rematch? Let me know in the comments below. If you haven't seen part one, check it out right next to me. Like and subscribe before you go though. And I hope you enjoy part one of this battle.